Is this the end of Ukraine as we know it? Is the Ukraine's war strategy surviving 2024 to win in 2025? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Militano.com. Militano.com is a channel that discusses wars, international relations, and opinions, and the toys used in them. Kiev needs arms and ammunition from its allies if it is to stave off Russian attacks over the coming months. After many weeks of bloody fighting, Russia finally took the fortress city of ADIIVKA this month, February 22nd, 2024. But then, Ukraine has an ambitious military goals for this year. What are they? Hold on. It is the third year of the country's full-scale war with Russia and the decade since Moscow illegally annexed Crimea and set off a conflict in eastern Ukraine after despair at the initial attack, followed by soaring hopes for a quick reversal. The facts on the front line now point to a year of stagnation. Ukraine's soldiers are exhausted and its military is running short of artillery ammunition and air defense rockets, while weapons like F-16 fighter jets and the US-made MGM-140 Army Tactical Missile System ATACMS have yet to arrive in significant numbers. Now, what can they do against an aggressive enemy like Putin's Russia? This year will be one of recovery and preparation on both sides. Like the 1916s and 1941-42 in the last world wars, nobody could provide a precise roadmap for 2024. 2024 has happened to be a most difficult year for the Ukrainians and their military on the front line. But all agree that three fundamentals will determine the trajectory of the coming months. First, which is number one, this spring is about managing expectations, as Ukraine won't have the gear or the personnel to launch a significant counter-offensive. Second, Russia, with the help of its allies, has secured artillery superiority and, together with relentless ground attacks, is pounding Ukrainian positions. And thirdly, without Western air defenses and long-range missiles, as well as artillery shells, Kiev will struggle to mount a credible, sustained defenses. Now, these are the three trajectories that are so obvious, even for the blind to see for those who are following this war. And this year will be difficult, no doubt. No one can predict from which direction Russia will go or whether Ukraine will advance this year. It is clear, however, that Ukraine is on the back foot in this war. After many weeks of bloody fighting, you see, that Russia finally took the fortress city of ADIIVKA without pausing for a breather. Its military proceeded to launch attacks on key Ukrainian strong points and logistical hubs. They attacked Robotyne in the region of Zaporizhia, Kupiansk in Kharkiv, and Chasiv Yar in Donetsk region. You see that these strongholds that have been captured are very critical factors in Ukraine's ability to establish a favorable defense positions. Russia is able to advance because it cares little about the lives of its troops, and these are echoes from the World War II. We know what the Russian troops did in World War II, how they threw their military personnel at oncoming bullets. The Ukrainian military estimates that taking ADIIVKA cost Russia 47,000 soldiers. Imagine. While Andrew Morozov, a Russian pro-military blogger who later committed suicide, wrote that the army lost 16,000 men. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky estimated that Russia lost 7 men for every Ukrainian killed. Adding to this disregard for its own losses is that Russia has been able to overwhelm Ukraine defenses with its huge artillery superiority. Now, because Russia's estimates annual production and recovery shells range from 1 million to as high as 4.5 million, this volume significantly exceeds the amount of artillery ammunition available to Ukraine. In contrast, Western nations are rushing to bolster their own munition production, with the US planning to work up to around 1 million shells annually by the end of 2025 from a pre-war total of 190,000. Russia has also been helped by the delivery of drones from Iran and as many as 1 million shells from North Korea, and has already used at least 24 North Korean ballistic missiles to attack Ukraine since the beginning of the year. Ukraine, meanwhile, is suffering a shortage of shells that is forcing its frontline troops to ration shots and rely on unconventional technologies like drones to hold back Russian attacks. Kyiv is trying to boost domestic production, but progress has been very slow. An EU promise to send 1 million shells by March has fallen far short. As few as 300,000 may have been delivered. The US may have sent many as 2,150,000 shells since the war began, but those shells have dried up thanks to political gridlock in Washington over military aid to Ukraine. A February 20 call between Ukrainian Defense Chief Rustem Umerov, Military Commander General Alexandra Syrskaya, and American Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin laid out Ukraine's priorities for new weapon and equipment in the coming months. The request, according to one person briefed on the call who was granted anonymity to discuss the conversation, reflects some important changes in how the Ukrainians plan to fight this year and indicate how the war has altered from the early years. As usual, more air defense systems top the list, but instead of fighting planes or tanks, Kyiv is seeking drones for surveillance and long-range strikes, followed by electronic warfare systems to jam the Russian drones and ballistic missiles, targeting Ukrainian front lines and civilian infrastructure. Whether the West does better in the coming months in supplying Ukraine will determine if it can hold the lines this year. That is very important. 2024. Maintaining the supply of surface-to-air missile ammunition for Ukraine's Western and remaining Soviet legacy air defense systems will be a crucial task for Western partners in 2024. Ukraine's military is running short of artillery ammunition and air defense rockets. US intelligence says that 315,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded since the fighting began, but the Kremlin continues to feed the war with more men. And that is another question is, and how is Kremlin able to raise more soldiers? We do know that Kremlin has 4 times the population of Kyiv, but how are they able to raise this more men so very quickly in a war that is expanded already into its 3rd year? Russian President Vladimir Putin said last year that Russia has 617,000 soldiers in Ukraine, with more on the way. Russia's population is 3 times that of Ukraine, allowing Putin so far to avoid a broader call-up and to rely instead on contract troops and on emptying the country's prison to provide cannon fodder. The stream of our men who are ready to defend the interest of the homeland with weapons in their hands is not diminishing, Putin said during his annual press conference on December 14th. Ukraine's army numbers 800,000 with reserve of over 1 million. Efforts to increase the numbers by lowering the draft age from 27 to 25, which would add about 400,000 men to the army, have encountered fierce opposition. Ukraine's general, however, need more men to be able to rotate exhausted soldiers away from the front end to build up new units of trained and rested troops. This year will be a year of strategic build-up and defense for both Ukraine and the Euro-Atlantic community, a time to build up the necessary military and industrial base. That is what the Estonian Defense Minister ADIIVKA said. By 2025, Ukraine would have the sufficient skills and means to defeat Russia. Really? How will this be possible? But Russia is a moving target, having put its economy on a war footing and now producing new tanks, planes, missiles and artillery, as well as ransacking Soviet-era stores for equipment and ammunition. Another problem for Ukraine is keeping the faith. Most Europeans back Kyiv, but an overwhelming majority think it will lose the war, which is basically a rational way to think, given that the enemy here is Russia. In Ukraine, 85% of the population still believe their country will win, but very few people can describe to you what that victory will look like and when it will come. The pessimism holds much to the fact that deliveries of aid have slowed in recent months, and this hangs on whether Republican leaders in the US Congress backtracks on their opposition on the Ukraine aid packages. Now, Russia has been able to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses with its artillery superiority. US Army Secretary Christine Wormuth said that if Congress doesn't pass the Ukrainian bill, it will be extremely damaging for the Ukrainians, because that money is going to be what gets them additional ammunition. European countries are also slowly accelerating their productions of arms and ammunition, both to send to Ukraine and to equip their own forces after years of neglect. But the mood on Ukraine is grim, as was evident at this month's Munich Security Conference, where last year's giddy optimism regarding a successful counteroffensive was replaced by sore pessimism. However, the former commander of the US Army in Europe, the fact that the Ukrainian maintains a viable defense and remains resolute are reasons to be positive. There is too much defeatism, General Ben Orgis said. For one, F-16 fighter jets will start to arrive in the next months, helping Ukraine vie for control of the skies. There are also indications that the US may send more ATACMS ballistic missiles, while Germany is under pressure to deliver its powerful Taurus cruise missiles. Such weapons would allow Ukraine to pound Russian logistics and air bases well behind the front lines, undermining its ability to keep attacking. Now wait a minute, this war has been going on for 10 years. Russia has had every advantage, and after 10 years they only occupy 18% of Ukraine. They've lost 500,000 troops. The Black Sea Fleet is getting worse by the day, and the Air Force is unable to get air superiority. What is needed right now is a clear commitment from Western leaders, not just to stick with Ukraine for as long as it takes, but to back it with the weapons it needs to actually win the war. So, in this video, from what we've learned, is Russia winning, or are they really in a very bad position? Until we come your way again next week, it's another very scintillating video. Let us keep keeping the peace, and we pray for Ukraine. And always remember what we say in this channel, that peace is priceless and war is always senseless. From me to you, it is bye.